Here.
Mr. Hunt, Kirby,
Here.
and Mrs. Harrington.
Here.
Item B, Dr. Spellman is going to give us a presentation on compensation and budget. Mr. Strong.
Mr. President, members of the board, it is the time of year where we traditionally come out and do compensation kind of initial looks at the budget as we're building the budget for fiscal year 24. As you know, the three primary responsibilities of board members: one, to set policy; two, set budget; and three, hire superintendent. Right? So this is fitting under item number 2, and item number 2 is simply that we start to build a budget for fiscal year 23-24. Okay? Initial look, nothing set in stone. This very first slide, a little small, but I'll point out, very first slide is what's set in the governor's budget. Traditionally, the governor's budget comes out in January, and in January, then you get the state legislators start to build their budget that comes out in May, usually. And then by the end of May, you usually have, sign die, however they call it, and you have a budget bill that's been in front of the legislature, signed by the governor, and we're set to go for the next fiscal year. Okay? The governor's budget in prior years was a pretty good signal of what was going to make it through, because you had basically a Republican held House and Senate and a Republican governor. This year, I can't promise you that the items in the governor's budget are going to make it through, but they'll have a negotiation process to go through. All right, very first thing, inflation funding. They are funding inflation. Statutory obligation says that you get 2% or inflation, the lesser thereof. We would prefer to get inflation this year. Inflation is going to run 7 to 8%, and we're going to get 2% because it's the lesser of thereof. So let me explain that again. If inflation was 1% and 2% is the statutory upper end, we would get 1% because 1% is the lower of inflation / 2%. With inflation being 7%, we're going to get to 2%. Does that make sense? It's the lesser thereof. That's worth about $562,000 for the district. Okay. The very next line down is a very, very important line. It's called growth funding. There's not many districts in the state of Arizona that are growing. Casa Grande is one of those districts that are growing. The biggest thing you need to know is back in about 2016, they changed statutory formula to be from prior year funding to current year funding. And that makes it a more difficult budget cycle, right? And what I mean by that is you used to be able to know how much money you were getting because it was funded off last year's students. Now we're not funded off last year's students, we're funded off the current year's students. So we have to project how many students we think we're going to capture next year. We think we're going to capture about 250 more kids, and that's going to result in about $1.7 million into this district based on the current funding level per student, per ADM, average daily membership. Then you go down to ESS B-weight. What's an ESS B-weight? And ESS is exceptional student services, commonly known as special education. And B-weight is we get a little extra money depending on the student's ability, right? We get a little extra money per student. Every year, they've been increasing the weights for certain categories. Last year, they increased the weight for autism and developmentally delayed. This year, they're increasing other weights. So every year, they're starting to add more money to the B-weight cycle. And that's going to be worth about $30,000 to this district. The FRLP program is the free and reduced lunch program. And we've been working on this at the state legislature for 8 years. And we finally got a bill passed with Megan Dollar-Trino. She works with EFRG, the Education Finance Reform Group. And the fact of the matter is, we were trying to make sure that school districts that serve kids in poverty got a little bit extra money because we believe that kids need opportunities. And sometimes in poverty, you don't have as many opportunities. Well, the state legislature finally last year for the first time funded this weight. And now the goal is to just increase the weight every year. Casa Grande's traditionally been about 60% free and reduced lunch. And so we get about an increase of $19,000 on that side. Then DA capital's going up. The DA capital's going up by about $50,000. This is the second year they've increased capital. For about 20 years, the state legislature didn't increase capital. It was stuck at $458 per student. And last year they had a significant increase. And this year they're increasing a little bit more. All told, to say this out in total, all told, we think we have $3.3 million in new revenues coming in next year. $3.3 million of new revenues. Notice capital's not in there because you traditionally do not spend capital on salaries and benefits for employees. right? You want to keep your capital in the capital budget because things happen like this weekend. We had a main line break at Union. Ralph's crew had to fix it. That costs money. Thank goodness we have Ralph's crew, because Ralph's crew fixed it all internally, so that's cheaper going third party. We got it all fixed, school's still functioning, and we're running away, right? But we have to have dollars in capital to fix items that come up like those main line breaks. One note to note on this is 1.743 million. That assumes 250 students of growth. We think that's a pretty reasonable number because we're graduating 700 kids. We're bringing in about 1,100 freshmen. In fact, this year we brought in a little more than 1,100 freshmen. We monitor at the state all our feeder schools and how many eighth graders they have. That's a great predictor for how many freshmen we're gonna have next year. So if you subtract 700 seniors going out and 1,100 freshmen coming in, you'd say, well, you should grow by 400 kids then. Well, the fact of the matter is you shouldn't build a budget on 400 kids because every time you're underneath that projection, you're then gonna get upside down on your budget. So we'd rather be conservative at 250 kids. What if only 100 more kids show up? Well, if 100 more kids show up, we're gonna be back to the board talking about, hey, we're short a little money this year. That's why you have a carry forward. We'll talk about the carry forward later on, because if you plan for 250 kids, we're incurring your funding, and only 100 more kids show up, guess what? You know, you're gonna be upside down by 150 kids worth of money into that budget, and you're gonna have to eat into your carry forward a little bit. So we think 250 is a very conservative number, because we think we're probably gonna grow by 400 kids next year, and we'll monitor enrollment numbers. We currently are monitoring enrollment numbers right now, and we will continue to monitor enrollment numbers every week. We have a weekly meeting where we monitor enrollment numbers for the next year, okay? One other thing to note real quick, this governing board for several years now has been very good with compensation and raises. This is something that's been shared already, but this is 3 years ago. This is last year, and this is this year. And you can see for these 3 example employees, and I can pull up all 300 employees, but for these 3 example employees, over the last 2 years, they've seen between 13 and 14% raises, which is good news because it's helping keeping up with the cost of living for these employees. So, and why do I bring up compensation here? I bring up compensation because the expense line item, one of the biggest things in the compensation side of things, and the expense line item is right there. Every year you want to say, what are we going to do for the expense side of the books in terms of increasing compensation and benefits for employees? Let me take you through some of these expenses here. Let's start with the bold red. The bold red are items that just are non-negotiable. And what I mean by non-negotiable, decisions have already been made. District liability increases, property, casualty, workers' comp, right? Those are all going to increase, and we think they're going to increase to the tune of $94,000 this year for the district. Utilities increase. We think, well, we know utilities are going to go up by about $100,000. One little note on that for the new board members, this district 10 years ago got into a solar contract with a solar contract that's 20 years long. That solar contract increases our rates by 4% a year. So the reason that's important is because you may see the commission come out and lower rates. Doesn't affect us. And it doesn't affect us is because we're bound by the solar contract. Okay, so I need you to understand that 107's set in our solar contract. That's why it's bolded. Employee benefit increases, that's healthcare insurance, that's dental insurance, that's Arizona retirement system. That's gonna go up by about $302,000. I wanna explain the next one, an employee benefit, benefits back from Fund 10. Fund 10 is the classroom site fund. Fund 10 is the classroom site fund. Generally reserved for those who have instructional value to the district, whether it's instructional assistants, teachers, people that provide instruction, direct instruction to kids, okay? In the past, this district has paid for health benefits out of Fund 10. That's not something that statutorily is looked upon with positivity, let's put it that way. We circle back with lawyers. The lawyers are telling us, UL Shumway is telling us to get that into the M&O fund. So we're gonna move $571,000 from Fund 10 over to the M&O fund. That's actually a little helpful in our current predicament. We've covered with this board several times that Fund 10 is in a less than solvent position. So this is gonna allow us to start building a little bit of a savings account in Fund 10 because Fund 10 is funded off sales tax, right? And so as sales tax wanes, your money in Fund 10 goes down, but we pay teachers out of Fund 10. So as that sales tax goes down, if you get a little bit of a savings account, you don't have to worry about teacher salaries going down. So this 571 back to M&O actually helps us build a savings account in Fund 10, okay? Then you have the compensation things. Compensation, by the way, in this district works through IBN. The IBN takes this data, tries to work out what compensation looks like, makes a recommendation to the superintendent by policy HA, and then that comes up to the governing board. So nothing is set in how that compensation goes out. We just know the heuristic is to give the teachers and instructional staff a 3% raise, it's $406,000 in this district. To give classified a 3% raise, support staff, it's $235,000. And to give administrators a 3% raise, it's $91,000. So in other words, nothing's set in stone, the board has to approve it, but we start with a 3% heuristic. Does that make sense to everyone? Here's 3%, here's what it looks like, and then IBN works through their process of, okay, how are we gonna administer these dollars? You keep going down the line here, if you grow by 250 kids, you need 10 extra teachers, right? Why? Because it's 25-1 typically is what you fund FTE at. And 10 extra teachers cost $941,000. You say, how? That's $94,000 a teacher. The average teacher in this district makes $71,000 according to Arizona Auditor General, not Master Auditor, Arizona Auditor General. Then you got to add all your EREs, health insurance, right? ASRS, right? Payroll tax, all of the employee-related expenses. So all total, 10 teachers cost about $941,000. You keep going down the line there and you see all the things. The big thing on this slide is that in black, you'll see things that are really kind of more negotiable. The black items are more negotiable. The orange items are less negotiable. The dark, bold red items have already been determined and have to happen, like increases to benefits are going to happen whether we like it or not, health benefits and ASRS. So all total, the very bottom line there, you see $4.7 million. So right now, as it sits in the budgetary planning process, we have $3.3 million in new revenues, $4.7 million in new expenses, and that's going to be the difficult bind headed into the 24 cycle, which is we have about $1.4 million in new added expenses that are beyond revenues. Well, can you do that? Well, you can. You have an $8.3 million carry forward into a $34 million budget. That's about a 25% carry forward. Used to be by statutory limits, you only can carry forward 4%, right? So we're sitting 25%. We're in a healthy position in this fund, in the M&O fund, we're in a healthy position. One thing I'll tell you on this carry forward, you probably, until you get Fund 10, the classroom site fund built up in reserves, you probably need to save $2 million in the M&O fund just in case sales tax goes down in Fund 10. And if sales tax goes down in Fund 10, then you're going to have that $2 million to help you carry through a low sales tax cycle. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so big message here, carry forward went up, and with the current budgetary planning, carry forward is coming down a little bit. At $6 million out of what we think is going to be a $36 to $38 million budget next year, that's still a 17% carry forward, which is a healthy carry forward, right? So it's not a terrible position to be in, but we're going to have to work through with IBN, with Ms. Salazar, with the governing board, $3.3 million in revenues, $4.7 million in expenses. Is that where we want to sit for school year 24? That make sense to everyone? Okay. Then the last couple things I want to talk about are just heuristics set in people's mind. What's $406,000? Well, if we weren't on a step salary schedule, $406,000 is a 3% raise to every teacher in the district. Step salary schedules are really unique, and I'm not arguing whether we should be on a step salary schedule or not be on a step salary schedule. But when you only have $406,000 and your diagonal raise means you're going like this, right? Teachers are getting a year of experience, plus they're getting horizontal advancement. When you only have $406,000 and your diagonal raise is 2.4 to 6.5%, $406,000 absorbs everyone's diagonal raise. Does that make sense to everybody? Because you're giving them a step down, step over, and that's 3%, which matches your diagonal raise of 2.4 to 6.5%. Okay? I was a teacher. I started off in Gilbert Unified. $24,000 a year was my very first salary on a step salary schedule. For the first 3 years of my teaching experience, we were frozen. In other words, I got no diagonal movement. My years of experience stayed at 1, And even though I was getting my master's degree, I stayed on the bachelor's degree column, okay? What did Gilbert Unified do instead? They froze me on step one, and they did the other thing, which is they added money to the salary schedule. So another solution is to take $406,000 and add money to the salary schedule. Either way, if teachers get their movement, or if you add money to the salary schedule, teachers are getting a compensation raise for next year. What we're gonna have to work through in IBN is there's 4 solution sets. Allow diagonal movement, and that's about all the money, $406,000. Freeze people horizontally, allow them vertical movement, get them a year's worth of experience, and that takes about half the money. And then if you do that, you can add money to the salary schedule. Freeze people vertically and allow them to move across if they get bachelor's degrees, become master's degrees, become doctorate degrees. And if you do that, it absorbs half your money, and you have money to add to the salary schedule. Or freeze horizontally and freeze vertically and just add money to the salary schedule, okay? In none of those situations, right, does it mean that people are making less money. It just means however you're gonna wanna slice it on a set salary schedule. Do you wanna add money through, right? And I'll tell you, I'm just gonna speak frankly here, the first year teacher salary was frozen in this district about $41,000, right? And the reason it was frozen at $41,000 probably is because, right, knowing my knowledge of step salary schedules, because you were allowing movement, and when you allow movement, right, you don't have as much money to push money through the salary schedule. So then you stay frozen on the beginning teacher salary setting. So those are the difficult decisions we're gonna have to work through the IBM process with the certified team on. And I just want you to know that the heuristic is we're spending $406,000 on compensation for teachers and instruction staff, $91,000 on compensation for administrators, $235,000 on compensation for classified. We're gonna have to work through how that interacts with the salary schedules that people are on. Does that make sense to everyone? And we'll do that with the IBN team. The last and final thing I have to mention at this point in time, as we continue to work together and educate each other, is when you allow someone to move across that step salary schedule, an employee making $78,743 to moving to $81,066 because they go from 19 years of experience to 20 years of experience, and they go from a master's degree with 36 hours to a master's degree with 48 hours. Here's what happens, okay? They get their raise, 78 to 81, and that's approximately your 3% number. But Fund 10, which is your classroom site fund, which we talked about earlier, funds $13,989 of it. But the classroom site fund may not be getting new revenues next year because sales taxes are coming in flat, right? So now your $13,989 stays the same year over year. And where does the pressure of the raise come from? The pressure of the raise comes from M&O. Does that make sense to you? It comes from M&O. And so a 3% raise to someone's salary actually can result in a 3% pressure, 3.6% pressure to the M&O salary, right? Does that make sense to you? Because your Fund 10 portion is staying at $13,989. And those are the kind of really difficult, complicated dynamics and why it's so hard to understand educational finance in the state of Arizona. And so I just will be explaining all this stuff to the IBN, right? And helping everybody understand kind of the gender heuristics. And we'll be working as a committee together to bring stuff back to you at the very next meeting. I'm hoping an IBN committee member or two will get up and present to you kind of where we're at in the development process. But I did want you to know we're starting our budget planning process for 23-24, and we're continuing to build so that we can be thriving next year, so we can serve kids. That was a pretty good presentation. I will take any questions.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
No, that's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sean.
Yep.
The next item D on our agenda is an executive session. So we're moved to go into executive session.
I'll second.
Been moved by Mr. Hunt and seconded by Mr. Kirby. All call for the question.
Okay, Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Hunt,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Mr. Kirby.
Yes.
And Mrs. Harrington.
Yes.
Okay, we'll We'll call this regular meeting of February the 7th to order. Mayor, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hayes,
Here.
Mr. Hunt,
Here.
Mr. Wright,
Here.
Mr. Kirby,
Here.
and Mrs. Harrington. Here.
And item B, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we remain standing for a moment of prayer, please? A moment of silence. Thank you. Preliminary items, going to adopt the agenda for item A. Is there a motion? I move. Been moved by Kirby. I'll second it. Seconded by Hunt. Any discussion? Call for the question.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Hunt,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Mr. Kirby.
Yes.
And Mrs. Harrington. Yes.
Thank you. Item B, the minutes of the past meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Hunt, seconded by Ms. Harrington. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mary, call for the question, please.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Hunt,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes,
Mr. Kirby,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington. Yes.
thank you. Number 3, recognitions. Student and special recognitions. Dr. Crump.
Mr. President, first of all, we'd like to invite up the Rotary representative who's going to present the Rotary Students of the Month. Mr. Grande, first, please.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to present to everyone in the room the February Rotary Student of the Month for Vista Grande High School, Justine Diaz. What's up?
What's up?
I've had the pleasure of knowing Justine since she was in 6th grade, so it's an honor to be able to present this to her. So, Justine Diaz, daughter of Jessica Diaz and Fred Quintero, was recognized on Tuesday, February 7th, 2023 as the VGHS February Rotary Student of the Month during the district's monthly, that's today. Justine is an active member of the Vista Grande community and participates in numerous extracurricular activities. Since her freshman year, she has been a member of the Spartan Dance Company and is currently the captain. Since her freshman year, she has also been on the marching band all 4 years and has been a section leader since her junior year. She was a junior officer and is the current president of the VG National Honor Society. Her other extracurricular involvement includes Link Crew, Cheer, Upward Bound, and Student Athletic Advisory Committee. Her teachers describe her as having outstanding leadership skills, as well as the drive and dedication to succeed in any environment. She has been accepted to the University of Arizona and received the Lumberjack Scholarship of full tuition waiver to attend Northern Arizona University. She has decided to study at the University of Arizona to earn a bachelor's degree of science in nursing. Then she wants to continue her education by earning a master's degree at the University of California, Los Angeles. Once again, Justine Diaz. Family can come up. Right?
Family.
Yep, family can come up.
Yeah.
Or is that?
You obviously want.
Jared. What?
All right.
Scoot over a little bit more. Thank you, sorry. Sorry. All right, here we go. Okay. Go ahead and scoot.
We'd like to
Very good job. Give it a look.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Go Bears.
Good evening, board presidents, board members. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you today. I'd like to invite up for our February Rotary Student of the Month, Haley Mays. Haley. So there's a lot of people that are behind Haley, both figuratively and truly physically here. In fact, when we asked her a little bit about herself, she was quick to point out that she would be the one with the loud group taking up all the chairs in the board. So we'd like to just thank them for having Haley be part of our school and for their support. Her family includes her father, Timothy Mays, mother, Summer Breen, stepdad, Shannon Breen, stepmother Amanda Mays, and her grandparents Dale and Sharon Mays. And so we'd like to recognize them as well. We don't have enough time for me to go through all of Haley's accomplishments, so let me just highlight a couple of them. All right, we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Haley's got an immense sense of humor. It's been a pleasure getting to know her, and certainly she likes to light up the room whenever she comes in, just a very friendly person, and she does that with our link crew and inspiring our freshmen. It looks like this year she's more than likely going to be our valedictorian. With a current GPA of 4.76. Yes, I said 0.76 at the end on that. She is president and captain of the tennis team. She does so well with tennis that she actually coaches tennis or tutors tennis, I heard, so pretty amazing, gives back to the community. She participates in Point Ballet. I was tempted to see if she'd do something for us. President of the National Honor Society, advanced placement student. By advanced placement, she's taken honors classes since freshman year and AP classes beyond mention. One of them AP Spanish, and we need to have her speak in Spanish to you as she greets you. She's a student council member, key club member, and a member of the swim team. She's also accomplished 32 college credit hours, pretty impressive. And then finally, Haley plans on attending Northern Arizona University's Honors College and focus her energies on civil or environmental engineering. And she says she wants to do it, I think, most impressively debt-free. So congratulations, Haley. Proud of you. The whole community.
Thank you. Grab a couple.
You're the important part.
All right, so we're all right. If that's okay, I'm gonna have you all shift this way. So that way. Thank you.
No.
Got everybody? Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Good evening, President Wright, board members, and members of the public. Tonight, the CTE for Technical Education Department would like to recognize 2 students in the Early Childhood Education Program. And I do want to make mention that the Early Childhood Education Program not only educates high school students, but we also have 3 to 5-year-olds inside of our facilities at both campuses, award-winning facilities, and the young ladies that I'm recognizing tonight are just one important part of that whole system. And these are our shining stars this year. So I will start with the student from Vista Grande, and that is Melissa Mendoza. Melissa, you wanna come up? And Melissa is here tonight with her mother, Cecilia Lujan, and her sister is here as well. And now I'd like to share her teacher's kind words. This is Melissa's third year in early childhood education. She's always on time and willing to do whatever is needed in the preschool. She is kind and generous to her fellow classmates and is a favorite among our preschoolers. She is a morning snack maker in the preschool, and she's great at making our running morning run smoothly. Did I have messed up any worse sentence than that one? Melissa is serving as vice president in our early childhood education FCCLA chapter. We've been working really hard to meet our chapter goals, and Melissa is always willing to do whatever it takes. Melissa, thank you for being such a big part of our successful year. We're very blessed to have you as part of our program.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Sure,
Yes.
yes, yes, Mrs. Walsh. Okay, yeah, they're good.
And from Casa Grande Union High School, we have Estrella Perez tonight. And she's here with her parents, Suzuki and Carlos Perez. And her teacher, Miss Mackenzie Rains, has some very kind words to say. Estrella is a shining example of a leader, both in and outside of school. She's currently enrolled as an advanced student in the early childhood education program and holds the vice president of finance position with FCCLA. She is a dedicated individual who is consistently focused on developing best practices in the classroom and is always striving to reach her goals. Estrella is a natural leader and is willing to step up and take on any task when asked. She provides guidance to her peers and is a champion to all. She is seen as the mother hen of the team and can be found assisting another student with their work or motivating them to do their best. I cannot thank Estrella enough for the level of commitment she has granted this program throughout the course of this academic year. Her enthusiasm and passion for learning has allowed others to follow her lead and enter a leadership role for the following years to come. She is truly deserving of this recognition, and it is a great honor to nominate her for the February CTE Student of the Month. And her teacher is here as well.
It's going on Facebook.
Perfect.
Mr. President, members of the board, we would now like to invite Mr. Hedda to the microphone to honor some of the hardest working parents a district has. And being a parent myself, I understand the working effort these parents put in. So, Mr. Hedda.
Good evening. My name is Martin Hebda, band director at Casa Grande. Proud to say this is year 22 at Casa Grande Union High School. So there are several board members that were on the board when I was hired, a superintendent, in the room when I was hired. I even have students in the room that I've taught. So it's really exciting to be here and give me the opportunity to talk. We're talking about the band parents in the Booster Club. And actually, if you could stand just so people can see where you are. And I got some behind me. A lot more in blue. And you can stay standing. That'll be awesome. I get the opportunity to see all the hard work that these individuals do on a daily basis. At first I said weekly basis, but it's really not weekly, it's daily because there's communication between them and me and all the work that goes on, and it's truly inspiring, and I'm really happy that we were contacted last semester about recognizing these individuals because they truly are the backbone of what we do with the Pride of Casa Grande. Over just some of the things that they do that you may not be aware of, they spend loads of hours weekly planning our events, taking the group somewhere, chaperoning trips, setting up the trips, setting up food, making sure we have drivers because we can't just go on a bus. We have to have 3 extra vehicles pulling equipment. They feed the students, they build props, and I'm gonna go into more about props because what they're doing there is pretty incredible. They're setting up uniforms, they're hemming uniforms, they're making uniforms, they're altering uniforms, they're fixing uniforms the day of a competition, 5 minutes before we go on the field. And of course, somebody has to push all the equipment on the field and to wherever we're going. It is unbelievable what these people do here. And I said I was gonna get to the props. So we build pretty much everything on our own. And I have Patsy, my president, and Wayne, my vice president here. They always come up to me and they say, what is it that you need to make the show great? And the problem with that is my design team and I, we kind of get creative. So I marked down some of the things that we do, things that we've got going on right now. I think we actually have some still at the school currently building because we have a deadline of shows coming up this weekend. The current project is welding stages, so we can have movable stages for our color guard to spin on and toss and move during their show. And they learned how to weld. We got a couple people that are welding, and that number is growing. So they're welding stages. We have movable. Of course, in the fall, I needed to have a big giant stage in the middle of the field so we could have, kind of a centerpiece. No problem. And then watching them design is incredible. They make things for us with 3D printers. They make, we had to have this thing that glowed, but you had to see it from the press box, and we had, I don't know how many prototypes of that, like 10 prototypes. Does this work? And then, well, maybe I could use lights from the police sirens, and like the things is unbelievable. We have easels that have to be transported on for our winter percussion show this year with puzzle pieces, which we've learned that there's such thing called magnetic paint. So you can put things up and it'll stay and come down, things I didn't know, which is pretty awesome. And then of course this fall, I said, I want the whole band to turn red. And they said, okay. So I'm so proud of just having the opportunity to say I work with a group like this. It is so unbelievable, and there's not much anything else I can do with words. It's just thank you for all you do for our community, for our students, because they are just unbelievable. I'm honored to have this opportunity. So thank you to the band.
Stay up here. Then some.
Nicole, I tried to get him in the window. We have one more recognition. We'd like to invite Simon Apataka up to the podium.
Right there, son. About to embarrass you. So, Mr. President, members of the board, since being here, we've had two different custodians at the district office and porters at the district office. And Mr. Apodaca, in 26 years of education, I've never been around a porter or a day custodian that puts a smile on my face more frequently. And here's what I recently wrote on behalf of making him Employee of the Month in the school district. Simon Apodaca is a vibrant personality who is warm and welcome at all times. His level of service in ensuring our facilities, and he goes to the sites to help out when needed, are extremely well sanitized and clean and been nothing short of exemplary. His professional, positive, upbeat, courteous. He's professional, positive, upbeat, courteous, and goes above and beyond in his job duties for the district. Several employees throughout this district count it a blessing that we get to interact with Simon on a daily basis. I will tell you right now, when I leave an interaction with Simon, I feel better about my day. And that's a really important thing as a human being. He lifts me and edifies me every time I see him. And I just really appreciate him being around this office. And I will tell you, I'm not the only one who says that. It is every employee at this office counts it a blessing to get to interact with you every day. So we appreciate everything you do for our kids and our community here in County Grand. Thank you, Simon. Employee of the Month.
Congratulations, Simon.
Ralph.
Yeah.
Mr. Apodaca, if I'd have known you're a Yankees fan, I might have changed my mind. Just kidding. All right, we're about to turn this back to the board, and we'll go into public comment.
Okay, we're gonna have a call to the public. We have 11 people wanting to speak this evening. The rule of thumb is 3 minutes per session. That amounts to about 33 minutes, so let's keep it precise and short so we can all get done with this.
If this isn't a formal agenda item, I just wanted to take a moment, if I may. The last meeting was particularly emotional for me and I know for many employees of the district. I had come into the meeting last week with the belief that we could broker a solution that would not result in the removal of the superintendent. When in my no vote, I used a word I should not have used. That was a product of my being emotional. And I want to apologize for using a word I should not have used at that time. That's not who I am, that's not who I want to be. And I just wanted to take a moment to formally apologize.
You need to resign. Be professional in two different ways from last meeting.
Mr. Kirby, will you read the public content statement?
Yes. Requests to speak to the governing board pursuant to ARS 38-431.02H. The board may make an open call to the public during a public meeting, subject to a reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to allow individuals to address the public body on any issues within the jurisdiction of the public body. At the conclusion of an open call to the public, individual board members may respond to criticism made by those who address the board, may ask the staff to review a matter, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the board shall not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. During an open call, the board requests that speakers refrain from voicing complaints against school personnel or other connected to the district, as it may impact due process rights. Policies KE, KEB, and KED are provided by the board for disposition of legitimate complaints, including those involving individuals.
Thank you. First person up is Michael Cruz. Michael Cruz.
You're going alphabetical order. That worked out for me, didn't it? Michael Cruz, Casa Grande resident and also governing board member with the Casa Grande Elementary School District. I just wanted to take a moment today and recognize your kids are our kids. And collectively, we need to work together in the best interest of students. Growing up, I went to a high school down in South Phoenix, famous civil rights leader by the name of Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez High School, as soon as you walked in the doors, there was a quote that was profound that I read every morning, and it stated, "It is not enough to progress as individuals while our friends and neighbors are left behind." Unfortunately, last meeting, fellow board members, our friends and neighbors were left behind when comments were made that accused these members of being racist. I'm here today because I was always taught by my mother, stand up and shake a person's hand and stand up when you see something wrong. As members of this community, we need to collectively work together. And the individuals that were brought to this attention deserve an apology. They deserve an apology because when you make accusations and claims without data, facts, or with no rhyme or reason, not only is it defamatory of the character of these individuals, it's an injustice for the community. It's an injustice for true minorities that are suffering racism and injustices and Title IX issues within their workplace. I bring this up because I know these gentlemen that were brought into question personally and professionally. Where President Chuck Wright, in my time as an educator and administrator, I've always been an advocate for students. And there's many times where I've accompanied students off duty as an education advocate in different programs to support students' excellence in schools. There was a time where a Hispanic student was wrongly accused, who recently lost his father and was disruptive in class because of behavior. And he was facing expulsion from his local school, local charter school. I agreed to attend and be an advocate for this student who is not even in our school system. And I show up and I was happy to see Mr. Wright there as the officer for that hearing. I knew that kid would get a fair shake. And Mr. Wright delivered his position in a fair, just, and right manner and stood for that student. So much so, he even called and reached out to me several months later to check in on that student. A Hispanic student and a student whose family was going through a lot. I wouldn't call that racist. Mr. Hayes, I have the privilege of knowing because he works with Pinal County. He is an enforcement officer with our probation division. He also shares the same county complex I work in, so I see him often. He's dedicated to representing all the individuals who committed crimes and who are focused on getting back into the system and working collectively to ensure recidivism doesn't happen. These people are of all walks of color, nature, backgrounds, and beliefs, but he's always stood firm and delivered service, no matter their color, no matter who they are, and always worked to help these people out. Lastly, Mr. Hunt. I've only met him a few times, but I know he's active in his community and I've seen the work he's done. And he's always done what is right. He's always been there to help people. Moreover, I encourage everyone in this board, at the end of the day, as we move forward, it's time to put the swords down, guys. And let's put the hand up. Let's shake each other's hand. Let's work together. Because what matters most is the students in this community. So as we go forward, whatever decisions are made behind that dais, those are your decisions. As a board member, I know what goes into them. A lot of action, a lot of thought and inquiry. But I encourage you, as we work collectively, we find a leader moving forward as the next interim superintendent that is someone of this community. Someone that has roots here, that has a presence here, that could restore trust, and who could restore a good quality learning experience for all. So thank you for your time today, and I appreciate it. And I wish you all the best as we move forward in putting students first. Thank you.
The second gentleman is Boots Hawks.
Thank you to the board for allowing me to speak. I come to you with sadness because we're here for the students. We're not here for any personal agendas. We're not here because we want to make a name for ourselves. Individuals on this board came here without pay, volunteering their time and their efforts to improve the lives of the students. I have two subjects I'd like to mention. One, even though the board member mentioned they shouldn't have said that, to use that type of language is unnecessary. I was in the military for 20 years, and one of the things that was in the leadership academies that was taught was that you could speak to people without using derogatory or foul language. If you can't communicate to them without doing that, you do not deserve your position. The other thing is that by doing that, you insult every member of that board, and you insult every student, every person in our community. For that, that individual deserves to be publicly censured or made to resign. The second thing, the racism issue. We insult those Indians that was put on reservations. We insult all the Asians that was put into camps just because of the way they looked. We insult all the blacks that was whipped and chased through the swamps and everything else. And the men and women that fought for freedom by loosely using that term. Racism is not something that we should take lightly. And to accuse individuals of that is an insult to those individuals that cannot be tolerated. I know a couple of these individuals myself, and I would stake my reputation and everything that I stand for that they are not racist. When I was in the military, you learn not to be racist. I spent 20 years also in the medical field. When they called the code blue, I had to run the rooms, do CPR, and do everything I could to save people. It didn't matter the color. And I think the individuals on this board would be willing to do the same thing. For these reasons, the individual that did these things, I hope learn from it and will never again do it. My time's up, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
The next individual is Larry Frank. Did I get that said?
Yes, it is. I'll pass on my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next individual is Hugh Byrne, Commander of Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Good evening, Board. My name is Hugh Byrne. I'm the VFW Commander of Post 1677 here in Casa Grande. I'm just here to let the board know, the community know about the JRTC program. It's wonderful that you passed a budget funding that program, but that's just the beginning of taking care and reestablishing that program here. We have to keep working hard at getting instructors and to revitalize the JRTC program. It's been an incredible program for the school district and for the students. So I'm here to offer our support, whether it be financially, whether it be with work and helping these students. Many different ways support can be had. So I want you to know, please contact our VFW Post myself as commander, and we will assist the school board in any way we possibly can to make a successful JRTC program. And here's my card. You can call me at any time. That's just fine. I will answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next individual up is Susan Workman.
I'm Susan Wortman. I'm a retired educator whose last position was the school psychologist at this district, and the widow of Randy Wortman, who was the first principal at Union when the first school opened, the new school opened in 1997. During the last 5 years, as my late husband and I have been writing our memoir, we seriously thought about leadership in this district. Since the board officially dismissed the district superintendent last week, I'd like to share our perspective about leadership. Actually, school districts and board members, administrators, and school board members should recognize that leadership should be collaborative, involve two-way communication, and recognize the leadership is a quality that could be developed in our teachers and the next generation. Using the analogy of our educational process is like moving through a forest, we need to ask who should be holding the flashlight to guide the way. Sometimes the school and this district are trying to just have one person holding the flashlight. However, I'm concerned that there may not be any light out there anymore. All of us need to learn how to hold and use that flashlight. And when a flashlight grows dim and quits working, you just throw it away? Of course not. You change the batteries. When a person messes up or finds himself in a dark place, you cast them away? Of course not. You help them to change their batteries. Some need AA, attention and affection. Some need AAA, attention, affection, and acceptance. Some need C, compassion. Some need D, direction. And if they still don't seem to shine, just sit with them quietly and share your own light. You know, as all of us, then the district and our community should continue to focus our attention on building a strong culture where everyone leads toward a future where there's an improving relationship between the administration and faculty. All of us should agree that our teachers in Casa Grande are among our heroes. Therefore, we should all treat them as community heroes. And a future where the community people and parents are active members of our school site councils. A future where the board and the administration will act as role models for like social and emotional skills that we want to develop in our students. For example, like to deal with bullying, we as adults should not be bullying each other. In my opinion, bullying is like the core of authoritarian behavior. in a future where all of our kids seen, heard, and represented.
This is working, you're at 4 minutes now.
I think we should have emotional check-ins for all of our students and adults. Challenging times should be met together. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. The next gentleman up is Ralph Matthew.
I'm Ralph Andrew. Thank you for taking my comments. Of course, history isn't necessarily a predictor of the future, but it can definitely help identify patterns of human behavior. And when we identify those patterns, we can then choose which ones lead to success and which lead to problems. From 1619 through 1865, the United States fueled its economy engine with the blood, sweat, and tears of slave labor. They were violently torn from their African homelands. Their lifetimes of bondage were filled with beatings, rapes, and lynchings. The United States Constitution, supposedly built on the premise that all men were created equal, counted blacks as only 3/5 human. Even after emancipation, black men weren't allowed to vote until 1870, women until 1920. From the late 19th and well into the 20th century, African Americans were subjected to intense segregation and limited freedom as states rushed to pass Jim Crow laws. While legally having the right to vote, blacks needed to overcome severe obstacles to actually have access to the ballot box. So-called monuments to honor traitorous Confederate soldiers were erected during these times by organizations determined to maintain segregation and political power over black citizens. America saw the beginnings of real estate redlining and bank loan restrictions designed to keep blacks in their place. Some of those restrictions are still in effect today. One horrible example, mostly ignored in public education, occurred in what was known as the Tulsa, Oklahoma Massacre of 1921, where an entire black neighborhood was destroyed and hundreds of people were murdered. This is not wokeness. This is not critical race theory. This is American history. Even now, black Americans face lower wages and higher health risks. A young black man today is more likely to die during a traffic stop than a white mass murderer being arrested at the scene. Today, we see a drive to ban books, whitewash American history, attack LGBTQ children, diminish voting access, and even the firing of a black high school district superintendent without cause. My question is, are we seeing a return to the patterns of the past? Consider the aspiring and talented black Casa Grande High School student. Does she learn the lesson sent by board members Harrington and Kirby, who say, "Go on, girl, we've got your back"? Or does she get the lesson from this board's majority that says, "Quit now, you have no chance"? Thank you.
The next person is Leslie Barnes.
Beverman,
Good evening, board members and those in the seated audience. My name is Leslie Beverniss, and I have a child that attends Casa Grande Union High School. I want to start off by thanking the board members who listen to the parents, guardians, the staff, and the community on their concerns of the former superintendent. I want to address those on the board and those in the audience who may feel differently. Let's put the things that really get me heated off to the side, like the budget, the putting off of programs and putting them at risk. Let's get past all that, because what really set me off was the most recent event on 1/19/23. I was pushed over the edge with this district, and on this day, a student was in fact in possession of a firearm, along with ammo on his person. I understand this issue was handled, but was it handled properly? No. The school should have gone into immediate lockdown. Furthermore, a mass text message and an automated phone call should immediately notify parents and guardians of this serious matter. Notifying parents and guardians hours later or not at all is unacceptable. The following day, a photo with a threat circulating causing panic among students. Later to parents, again, no lockdown was implemented. Parents rushed to the school in fear of that threat, and the superintendent, staff, and security were noticeably unprepared and untrained for this scenario. Although the superintendent was on campus, she showed no compassion, and instead of reassuring parents standing in the long line, she paused what seemed to be shocked and walked past us all. Later, a notification went out, again hours later. Instead of taking accountability, the superintendent chose to parent shame those parents and went to go pick up their children in an email and a text. I was that parent that picked up their child because they felt unsafe. I drove by the school to see if the school was on lockdown and secured. It was not. I was in a long line of parents waiting to enter the school. I immediately got out and had my mother get in the driver's seat. I walked to the gate entrance where I was met by security. Expecting to be asked for ID, I had my Arizona driver's license and my military ID at the ready. Instead, he stated, "Nah, you're good." At 17:30, a statement was sent out regarding the incident. The district's SOP for such incidents would have been implemented, if any at all. The school would have never experienced the gaggle they did on that day. On 1/23/23, what we know to be a traditional way to reach out and inform and educate students in the form of an assembly was not done. Instead, an email and a text was thought to be adequate. In the email and text, it was put on parents to educate their students on protocols instead of the principal and the superintendent taking accountability of communicating effectively. On 1/27/23, a shelter-in-place drill, not a lockdown, was issued. This was an obvious attempt to save face. I suggest the governing board review the SOP for such scenarios and the difference between the two drills. In closing, people need to realize leadership and accountability, it trickles from the top. When you do not have the accountability, then you have a liability. That's what the superintendent was. We need to do better, we need to be better, and we need to get back to the kids.
Amen. Thank you. Next gentleman up is Jack Kenneth, general comments.
Good evening. So far, for a slate of new members that have promised on social media to be open and above board, they should have been spending a very large amount of time behind doors in executive session. Since taking office 30 days ago, they've had 5 to 6 executive sessions. First off was the termination of the superintendent's contract and a 30-day discretionary period of the contract, the parties involved for no comment by anybody. There was no cause given. There was no explanation on the costs or future plans. The following day, Mr. Hunt, in speaking to the dispatch reporter, said he had investigated for 3 weeks to find that he had cause and justification for his actions. This is contrary to the 30-day no comment by parties involved, that it was agreed on by all. We're yet to hear any clarification for the actions taken by the 3 members. When the board member Kirby asked for clarification, the president simply ignored Robert's rules and called for the vote. Nor have we had a breakdown on the 2.5 years of contract, plus some benefits due to the superintendent. Dr. Strong today presented a $500,000 has been built into the budget. All told, the board president has been very busy doing things essentially by himself since the firing. He met with the admin Fedifolk people individually and pulled from tonight's agenda an action item associated with their contracts. He then chose a couple of handpicked candidates with local background to interview for the job of interim superintendent. There is already one person currently on staff who is more than qualified to handle the interim superintendent role. Dr. Mastrom is very talented, and there's an agenda item for him tonight to be the interim with an interim stipend. He then scheduled interviews and brought the whole board together to meet them. He placed and gave the board on the agenda tonight an action item to begin immediate negotiations with their preferred candidate. Where was the process? Where was the board actions, above board action? Where was the explanation of where the monies were coming from? If there's not a right way to get an interim or a full-time superintendent when you have someone already more than qualified who knows the current staff and has actual experience with the district. My questions are, be honest with the community on the process, explain $500,000 and what it's gonna go to. And it seems like one of the biggest questions I have is, it seems like $500,000 plus could do a lot to hire quite a few teachers. You would think the association, acting in the best interest of kids, would want answers also. I guess that's to be determined. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Board member?
Excuse me, Mr. President, could you take control of the audience here? It's really obnoxious that these comments are being made. These people come to address the board, they don't need to be harassed with these typical comments that are coming out here. Please take control.
Things were being carried out last week. The next gentleman is Noel Reck.
I'm Noel Reck, a retired teacher from the Cherry Creek School District number 5 in Greenwood Village, Colorado. I composed my remarks a few weeks ago due to the election of State Superintendent Horn. With the knee-jerk dismissal of Dr. Battle, they become more germane. I have questions to ask and suggestions to offer the entire board, but they are more appropriately directed at the two newest members to get a better sense of your educational philosophies and opinions on specific methodologies. I think they were glossed over during the election and the public should know more. My first questions are very simple. With Superintendent Horn installed and Dr. Battle dismissed, what now? Do you have a plan? And what will it be? How will you improve instruction, regain community confidence, and keep students in the district? With Superintendent Horn at the helm, what will you do to derail the hunt for the critical race theory boogeyman? Or are you a member of the hunt? Knowing Governor Hobbs will veto any expansion of the voucher scam if the $7,000 tax break for the wealthy is still in play, what will you do to keep the very few students whose families can afford the difference between the $7,000 and the actual tuition from leaving for private schools where there is no accountability? Likewise, with Superintendent Horn's affinity for charter schools, what will you do to counter the proliferation of charter schools who will try to shepherd through while keeping students from leaving for existing charters? I'll note there are good charter schools, but there are also those that are only out for profit and or the ability to indoctrinate students. Arizona has unfortunately had to deal with charter school corruption several times in the past. What will you do to influence the legislature to act regarding the spending cap? What will you do to stop the elimination of curricular programs and professional development opportunities that Superintendent Horn and his staff don't like? What steps will you take to attract and retain teachers in the district? Regarding methodology, instead of the meager 6-period day, would you be in favor of a true block schedule? Are you in favor of interdisciplinary instruction? Would you implement a service learning program that is inclusive of community members and local business rather than a program that only entails an hour-by-hour requirement? Would you support a program that would properly train security and resource officers to deal with school issues should resource officers be utilized at all? How will you address the need for talented professionals outside the classroom to meet the social and emotional needs of students? Due to the protocols of this meeting, I know you can't respond to my questions or comments tonight. I leave you my email address so that you can respond in the near future. I will close with a warning to the Casa Grande community. Be aware, be on guard, this is only the beginning. The hunt for critical race theory and the corresponding whitewashing of American history is on its way, as will be the banning of books and curricular programs. This is the playbook, the Florida model. Infiltrate school boards and take districts back to the 1950s. Casa Grande did not allow this to happen. Those who seek to recklessly dismantle our schools must be held accountable. Thank you.
You are. Thank you. The last person is Gloria Ben.
Please have decorum in the meeting, please. Gentlemen, if you can't get along, we'll ask you to leave. Thank you.
Gloria Ben, please.
Good evening, board members. My name is Gloria Aubin, a member of the Casa Grande community and a grandparent student at Union. I want to personally thank the board who heard and further acted upon the community's concerns and worries. Teachers, students, and parents voiced their disquietude about the superintendent, stating strongly that they felt changes were needed. And you, the board, listened and responded. As for the possibility of having to buy out a $300,000 contract, I say it was money well spent for our students. Spending $300,000 for our children's future would be worth every dollar. From community members, teachers, and parents that I've heard from, they are extremely grateful for the action of the board. Support of our students should always be our first priority. We will continue to support you and your future decisions. In many instances, yours is a thankless job. Tonight, however, I and the community applaud you. Thank you.
That concludes our regular call to the public. We'll move on to matters reserved for board action, and that will be item A, ASBA policy revisions.
Mr. President, members of the board, typical policy revision administered by ASBA regarding foster care.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the first reading revision as presented.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Mr. Hayes and seconded by Mr. Kirby. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote, man.
Mr.
Good
Hayes?
job.
Yes.
Mr. Head?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
And Mr. Harrington? Yes.
Motion carried. Item B, action item, interim superintendent contract addendum.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is just an action item to put someone in the role of acting interim superintendent until the board decides upon the interim superintendent.
Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Been moved by Mr. Hunt, seconded by Mr. Kirby. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call for the question.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Head?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Harrington?
Yes.
Item number C, interim superintendent candidate. This agenda item has been asked to be pulled and tabled until the next meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we table it until the next meeting.
For a second?
Second from Kelly.
Second from Ms. Harrington. Is there any discussion?
Do we want to just make a motion or a comment that we are diligently working towards a solution that will hopefully bring the community and the district back together, is what I want to say.
Call for the question,
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
Motion carried. Item D, roofing products and services through IGA.
Mr. President, members of the board, we've been granted a building renewal grant under the direction of Mr. Belloc in the operations department. That building renewal grant is paid for out of the general fund of the state of Arizona and helps relieve local taxpayers of having to have their tax rates increased to replace building parts like the roof. This total spend is $3.99 million, of which we're only using $104,000 of district money because the school facility board does not cover administrative space. We don't want to just replace the student space because we'll be on different maintenance schedules on the roof. And therefore, $3.882 million of the $3.99 million is going to be covered by the state with $104,000 coming out of our capital budget. Progressive Roofing is on consortium contract, and this is an item to award Progressive Roofing that contract to come in and do a re-roof at Casa Grande Union, which is much needed.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Harrington, seconded by Mr. Hayes. Any discussion? Hearing none. Call for the question, Mayor.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
Item E, terms and conditions of acceptance of monies from building renewal grant from Vista Valley High School emergency roof repair.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is another building renewal grant that, Mr. Belloc himself will compliment his team. He's got a strong team in operations, doing the work, and this is the fourth building renewal grant to the school's facility board for Vista Grande emergency repairs, $9,100 taxpayer relief due to this building renewal grant being paid for out of the general fund.
Good job. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved by Mr. Hahn and seconded by Mr. Kirby. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to say a special thank you to the gentleman that put this together, spent his time and effort in making this happen. It is a big relief for the Casa Grande Union High School district to get this money.
Thank you. Call for the question, Mary.
Yes.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
Item number F, release of RFP 2023-02, request for proposal to provide athletic training services to Vista Valley.
Mr. President, I'm going to try to be short on this one. In prior years, an athletic training stipend was provided to teachers who taught sport medicine, right? This is a typical practice in a lot of districts throughout the state of Arizona. That then resulted in the sports medicine teachers / athletic trainers who were certified having 14, 16-hour days. Most districts are transferring to a position where the CTE teacher, the sports medicine teacher, covers teaching duties during the day, and then athletic training services are covered through third party and after school. This last year, we had a commitment from a local health provider to provide athletic training services, and due to the short supply of athletic trainers, we had to scramble at the last minute, and we had help from both EMTs and a company called AT Services. The problem is, over the course of this last year, we're accruing expenses that are approaching the RFP, request for proposals threshold, set by Arizona Administrative Code. So if we don't go out for RFP, our auditors are going to essentially come in and say, you should have went out for RFP because you're spending too much money on athletic training services without procuring proposals in a competitive bidding process. Does that make sense to everyone? So this is us attempting to prepare for school year 23-24, submitting an RFP out to the public so the public companies can respond and we can evaluate with an evaluation committee who's going to provide athletic training services for 23-24.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved by Mr. Hahn, seconded by Mr. Kirby. Is there any discussion?
As someone who was once a student trainer himself in Ohio, under similar circumstances, it will be a much needed service for the community and our district.
So you volunteer?
I'm not qualified.
Call for the question, Mary.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
Thank you. We move on to number 7, the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to have anything removed from the agenda? Is there a motion to approve A through J?
I move to approve items A through J of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Kirby and seconded by Ms. Harrington. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Call for the question, Mary.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
And Mrs. Harrington.
Yes.
All right, nothing else for the board, we're adjourned.